Hey, everybody. It's Dr. Erin here. I am the only good doctor with you currently. Dr. Kristen is joining presently in a few minutes. She's been feeling a bit under the weather today, so she went home during the middle of the day, getting stuff together to join us for our Good Doctors Diagnose. It is Tuesday, May 13th, 2021. And boy, do we have an interesting Good Doctors Diagnose for you. We're going to be talking all about things you can't say anymore. Because the more we think about cultures and build empathy through the work that we do, we just have a running list of phrases and words that are no longer considered acceptable to keep using. So we want to talk about it. Today, it's going to be kind of like a big old empathy exercise in focusing on what that looks like and why we can't say these things and what it means to listen to people, usually from marginalized groups, about their thoughts and feelings about words that sometimes have a really long historical context, sometimes don't. But either way, it's worth considering what else we could say. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm not going to get started with our empathy exercises until Dr. Kristen joins us. So I'm just going to talk to you guys a little bit while we're going here. If anybody's out there and wants to say hello, is watching this, hello to our replay crew. Hello to our listeners, wherever and whenever you are engaging with this. We have very, very exciting news here from the Good Doctors. We have a podcast. We talked about it last week. It's called The Culture Cast. It is live on most podcasters, Apple Podcasts and Stitcher, giving us a little bit of drama, but making sure that you can get access to it. If you want, go on our website and go Abbey Research /podcast, and you can find all the links to all the podcast places where you can find it, especially until Apple gets their stuff together. Well, hello, Dr. Kristen.
Hello. Sorry for the delay, everybody. Thanks for joining us today with my a little bit groggy and sunburned self, but I am here to join you all.
I know. I didn't see your message until after I already went live, and I was like, cool, I'm just going to hang out. just shoot the shit with our folks out there. We're very excited. Also, our friend Jay, who says she's very much looking forward to today's discussion. We've got a whole long list, Jay, of things we don't say anymore. So it's going to be fun to talk about it. Clayton Kelly, hi there, friend. We saw your comments about the Emmy nominations, but I haven't gotten to it yet. But the YouTube did tell me that you commented and that the nominations were out. Kristen, I don't know if you saw them, but The Handmaid's Tale got a slew.
I saw that The Crown and The Mandalorian did. Okay, sure. Okay.
Handmaid's Tale got a lot, especially our dear friend Elizabeth Moss, who I think she should get like a special Emmy for the work.
Yeah, no, she definitely should. Like she's something else.
But I love that our season 4 recap came out on Emmy Noms Day, like we planned it. Y'all, we didn't.
I had no idea. Yeah, no idea that Emmy noms were happening today at all. This is normally something like I'm on top of. So we're just going to blame the after times.
Yeah, I feel like it's a weird time for the Emmy nominations, but I could have totally made that up and it could be a normal time. I don't know.
I feel like it's around the summer because the Emmys are normally in September.
Yeah.
But I could have sworn to you it was closer to August, but who knows?
Who knows? Anyway, Emmy noms are out. Thanks for the social media bump. Emmy categories, because then I can retweet a bunch of our stuff.
The Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, I think. I can't remember. Anyway.
Sure. Thanks for that. But now that we have both good doctors with you, I think we can continue with our, show for today. So I've got empathy exercises lined up.
My God, there are so many today.
Yeah, but I edited them.
Good. Okay, cool.
Because we had too many, and I really wanted to talk about the team from Washington, especially since it fits so well with things we don't say anymore.
Cool. I am as always at your guide.
So the first empathy exercise we have for you guys is, hold on, I'm gonna write down the time. I'm all prepared today, y'all. I have like Post-it notes everywhere. I'm ready to go. But I'm getting ahead of myself because we have something to celebrate the good doctors do today. Dr. Kristen, what would you like to share with our dear viewers about the exciting news we got yesterday?
Yeah, I have been graciously and miraculously accepted to be one of the speakers at TEDx Chicago this fall. So I will be talking about trauma, and I am incredibly honored that the committee chose me. This is a very popular TEDx. There was over 200 applications, and I am one of a handful. So very, very excited. I can't believe I've gotten 2 TEDx's in 5 months.
Crushing it,
which is nuts. And I've landed another one before my first one even came out to the YouTubes. So that's amazing. Taylor is a student at Northwestern. Plan on coming to Chicago. Absolutely. It's October the 14th. It's a Thursday. And the good doctors will both be there. We'll also be doing some sort of good doctors get together that week in Chicago for anybody who can join us. It's going to be amazing. Jay and I have a mutual friend who is in the area that we're excited to see as well. So thank you, everybody. Really excited to be able to join you.
Yes, it's so exciting. A bunch of congratulations coming in from some of our favorite folks. Lauren, congratulations. Clayton says, that's so great. My Bluetooth mouse just went out because we're doing it live. Here,
I can do this. And I know our Canadian friend says if the border would just reopen, we agree. We
agree, Jay. Someday. Yes. So now that I got that exciting announcements out of the way, podcast, Dr. Kristen on like every TED stage sheet, like across the country. Like I'm just gonna like buy a red circle carpet to keep. So that just like we should cut like a square from it and get it framed or something, a la the turntable piece that you have from the floor of Hamilton.
From the original stage at Hamilton, yeah.
Yes. Okay. Sidetracked. I'll keep track of this in my notes. Back to the empathy exercises.
You're doing great.
The first one was one that Dr. Kristen found from our friends at NPR that was a fascinating photo documentary, like diary, where they asked people around the world to take a picture of 15 things they couldn't live without in a pandemic.
Fascinating.
It was so interesting. We'll make sure and put the link in the show notes on the YouTubes, folks, or when you're listening to this on the podcast, the links will be there as well. But just take a gander and look through the photographs. As a person who studied like the meaning and significance of objects and what we give them, it was really interesting to think about. And it's a fun exercise, I think, to think about what are some of the objects that you couldn't live without during the pandemic, Dr. Kristen?
My Kindle.
Uh-huh.
That's a great question. I wasn't thinking about this. Of course, that like for you, I would assume your yoga mat, like all your yoga supplies. My coffee machine, my Keurig. Probably it's so strange because we had really different pandemic experiences and we've talked about this. If I haven't talked about it on the Good Doctors Diagnose, but as part of like my job with the parent company, we didn't ever shut down.
Right.
So I still kept going to work. Like, I mean, obviously a mask would be a major part of it. Cause
I was about to say like one of your snazzy Marvel masks, I think would factor in there.
Yeah. I had a really great Avengers one that went with me everywhere. I got to make lots of whatever it takes jokes, which was so important. I got a Switch. Like I played a lot of video games, so I think that would be one of mine.
I was gonna say Stardew Valley has to go up there.
Yeah, and I would love to say like a water bottle, but that was not nearly as important to me as the coffee maker. So I mean, like, oh my God, my phone. I lived an entire life through my phone.
Yeah. Clayton says, of course, hand sanitizers. It's interesting how many people didn't put that in their picture, Clayton. So make sure that you take a look at it and see what everybody did. There weren't a lot of masks either, which is interesting, the significance that we give things. So that's our first empathy exercise. Up next is one that we came across this weekend, and I left a rather lengthy voice message on Dr. Kristen's phone while she was
getting sunburned in Cape May, New Jersey.
Sunburned in Cape May. But if you have heard anything in the last week or so about the controversy surrounding Rachel Nichols' demotion at ESPN.
Yeah, I think that's the word we have to use.
I think that's the word we're using. And has been, sorry, I apologize. I am scrolling to find the woman's name who is replacing her, Maria Taylor. So she was chosen to lead the coverage of the NBA Finals on ESPN and kind of sidelining Rachel Nichols in the process. And Rachel, as folks and humans are often want to do, leaked an audio tape in which she complained about the hiring of Maria Taylor, claiming it was a diversity hire from ESPN, landed herself in a whole bucket of hot water about race and diversity hires and women in sports, especially women in sports broadcasting. So, Dr. Kristen, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. What thoughts have you to share? Why is this one of our empathy exercises?
Because it's complicated. And it's my first response when I heard Dr. Aaron's voicemail was, well, she probably was a diversity hire, because ESPN is terrible about hiring women.
Yeah.
Is terrible about hiring people of color, Stephen A. Smith notwithstanding, but is terrible about that. And then there's an age thing in this too, because there is an age difference between the two women. And like, I don't trust ESPN as far as I can throw them in terms of a culture of equity or a culture of representation. I don't think it has anything to do with the skill sets of either one of these women. I think that culture is so toxic that she was. Yeah. And there's a level at which I understand Rachel's anger. I think this is a really petty and not a great way to go about expressing your problem with your employment. But I think it's just, I think it's really messy. Again, because of the legacy of women in sports broadcasting, and that the legacy there is like, oh, we have one woman, done.
Yeah.
And I will say I'm a little bit shocked that neither one of these women is blonde and named Heather, because I feel like so many sports channels are and Rebecca Lowe on NBC Sports has talked about this, that she is very aware that the visuals are more important for women than they are for men.
Oh, for sure.
And ESPN is the mothership of sports broadcasting. Like, if anyone is more interested in the specific machismo of ESPN, there's a great long oral history of ESPN that is pretty much just like, how dude can we make a network?
And I think one of the things that was interesting for us to talk about was to break down these ideas of gender and the performance of gender and in sports. And in sports commentary, and you were talking about what these women looked like, and they are both very beautiful women, thin women, young women, fitting
comparatively. Even though there is an age gap, we're still talking.
Yeah, comparatively. Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
I don't know how old Rachel Nichols is, but she's still quite young.
She does not present as a senior citizen. So
correct. Yeah. And, there's very much the body type, the performance, and the appearance of femininity. And even sex appeal that's hugely important for women in media. I remember when I read Mika Brzezinski's book, she talks about how her budget when she started with Joe Scarborough for clothes was like the same as his, but he just had one suit and like 15 different ties. And she kept trying to save money by wearing like the same dress every Monday. And then she got a bunch of crap from viewers for wearing the same clothes. And she's like, Joe literally wears the same suit every day and no one cares. So I think it is really complicated. Rachel's apology was not great. She didn't do it well. But it's an interesting one to look at in terms of understanding that the institution, in this case, ESPN and the patriarchy, is always going to protect itself. And everything is political. So Maria Taylor is an exceptional broadcaster. She's very talented. Was she a diversity hire? Probably.
But honestly, probably so was Rachel.
Yeah. Because I don't trust ESPN to do anything besides tick boxes. And if you're a woman and you're trying to get ahead in sports broadcasting, you take the opportunities you can get because it's a small window of women that are allowed through. So empathy exercise number 2. Empathy exercise number 3 is a real quick one, but I just wanted to shout out Zalia Avant-garde, who won the Scripps National Spelling Bee last week. The first Black girl ever to do it.
First African-American. There was a Jamaican girl before this.
First African-American, excuse me.
I've seen that. I've just seen that correction going around the Twitter. So
hilariously, Scripps's tweet was like, she was the first Louisiana-born winner. And I was like, Scripps, that's not why.
We're burying the lead, Scripps. We're burying the lead. Yeah.
But if you haven't heard of Zalia, she's amazing. Her basketball talent, she holds like 3 Guinness World Records for juggling basketballs or something. Like, just Google footage of her. She's phenomenal. I want nothing but literally the moon for her. And this is not the last we're going to see of her. Jay has a comment here about our beloved sport of ice hockey. Sportsnet just got a female hockey commentator this season. Fantastic player from our women's national team. But yeah, all white dudes. Yeah, hockey's real bad. I mean, all sports are. NBC has done a pretty good job of bringing in former U.S. Women's Olympic ice hockey players, AJ Malesko being the big one. The New York Islanders, their 2 broadcast women for every one of their 2 broadcast folks for every game are women. But yeah, I grew up an ice hockey fan and would have loved to be a sports commentator and never saw anyone that looked anything like me. So
no, I mean, baseball was the same way for me. Yeah. I know Abby Wambach has been really, really vocal about this on Twitter recently, because there was a whole thing about how, it would be really good to have a woman commenting on the women's national game. And her response was, well, why don't we have 2? Because men comment on the women all the time.
Yeah.
Why don't we have 2 women commenting on the men's national team games? So yeah, it's a whole thing. All right. So empathy exercise number 4.
Number 4. This is one that Dr. Donnelly brought to my attention yesterday. Exciting news for the 12th of July, which means something very different in Northern Ireland to our friends in Northern Ireland. But we had an announcement from the president of the National Football League team from Washington, Jason Wright, who released a very lengthy and pretty good statement about the controversy surrounding the team's name. So that's going to lead really well into our Good Doctors Diagnose today of things we don't say anymore. For those of you that don't know, the team from Washington's former name was Redskins, which is considered literally by the dictionary to be a racial slur against Native American and Indigenous folks, and is a very high-profile example of a very long history of derogatory and stereotypical Native mascots, which happen in the United States from like elementary schools all the way up to National Football League teams. We have a lot of research that shows that these images in particular impact especially young Native folks in a not good way. They have issues of self-esteem, identity, suicidal thoughts, drug use, you name it, all of those things that are associated with this kind of ongoing, very public trauma. So the team from Washington bowed to the pressure after 30 years, roughly, of organized.
And specifically mounting from outside of the Indigenous community for about the last 5.
Yes. So we should say Indigenous Native American activists have been on this, especially Amanda Blackhorse, for a very, very, very long time.
Took the rest of us a little while to catch up.
In the last 5 years, we've seen a lot of pressure from sponsors of the team, which carries a lot of weight. And
that's why that's really, if you want to be honest, probably what was the tipping point was the company that had naming rights to the stadium. Yeah, pulled out their sponsorship unless the name was withdrawn. So they withdrew their name a couple of years ago, and they were in the process of finding a new one. So this statement is kind of an interim statement saying, we've done a lot of listening to Native folks. We understand their trauma. We're sorry for participating in it. And we're going to continue to consult on making a decision on a new name. He addressed the fan base who are claiming that Warriors might be a good substitute. And then they heard back from a lot of the Native folks they've been talking to, and we're like, no, that's still a little bit too closely linked. So very unequivocally came out instead and said that their new name will have absolutely no connotation at all to Native American imagery, iconography, history, culture, whatever. So was really encouraged by that because, that former team name is a word we don't say anymore. And it's not, that one is the most egregious because it was a slur, but there are lots of others that are not slurs, but are still incorrect. As Lauren says here, it'll be nice when my hometown of Kansas City decides to change the name. For non-Americans, they are called the Kansas City Chiefs. But I don't know if fans are applying pressure. I'm not a football fan. Lauren, there are fans applying pressure, not to the extent that the team from Washington got because of the lack of outright slur. But we've got this across a lot of teams. And like one of the high schools by me uses the old Washington racial slur as their team. Like this is all the thing. And Lauren says she votes for the Kansas City Chefs. I want you to know that we call them the chefs in our houses, actually. I don't think they wear white hats. I think this is fine. Yeah. My dad went to high school in Kansas City and is a Chefs fan, and he has called them the Chefs for a very long time. So yeah, we're hopeful. I mean, the state of Colorado, my home state, just passed a law in the last week banning the use of Native mascots and imagery and actually implementing a system of fines for schools, like high schools and middle schools and elementary schools that continue to use them. So we're making some inroads on this, but there's a long way to go. So I think with those fantastic empathy exercises out of the way, believe it or not, folks, I actually cut a few out of there, but we wanted to make sure we got in a good discussion, especially about Rachel Nichols and the Washington team's announcement, especially because it leads so nicely into our topic, which is things we don't say anymore. So Dr. Kristen. All right. So this is one of those times in which we tell you guys we're not afraid of the hard conversations. We're not afraid of the hard conversations. So we've broken them down into a couple categories. I want you to know that we capped ourselves to a 20-minute brainstorming session and decided to stop here. We're going to be doing more research in a little while, and we'll be actually offering a more cohesive course about this coming on later this year. But we wanted to start this conversation with you guys, our incredible YouTube community. Maybe also if we don't mention the thing that we don't say about your community or your hometown or your whatever, we would love stuff. So let's start with Native and Indigenous words. The biggest one that is just off the top of our head, that is our bugaboo, as my mother would say, is spirit animal. So this is incredibly popular among white people in particular, and white millennial women who live their lives on Pinterest. To say, and this has been for most of my life, I know, but like really popular in the last 10 years. So spirit animal is a very specific religious and spiritual entity of many tribes. It is not something that you get to choose because you like a character on television. The word we use instead, like honestly, is either inspiration, hero. Patronus is the one that Aaron and I use, which is a completely made up thing from Harry Potter and serves exactly what you are trying to say, and not using the thing. Oh, I should say, since Lauren just commented that she used to say it all the time and she's very embarrassed, we used to say most of these things all the time too.
All the time.
This is about growth and about grace. We hope you guys know we are not shaming people center here. We all say these things, but it's one of those, like, when we know better, we do better. Yeah. So here's some things we're going to do better. So if you take nothing away from today, besides please never say spirit animal again, unless you are Indigenous, I will be a happy camper. You'll find it tripping off your tongue. Stop it and say something else instead.
Yeah. And because we at the start of this, I talked about, at the start of our video today, this is kind of a huge empathy exercise, right? Because as I was kind of categorizing the brainstorming list we came up with when we were together, a lot of this is from, a lot of these names and phrases come from language that is used to marginalize, that is used to other, that is used to diminish. So adopting spirit animal as a way to say, like, oh, Starbucks chai lattes are my spirit animal. It diminishes the Native and Indigenous tribes and nations and people groups that have that spiritual belief. So it's important to understand kind of the origin of where they come from, and that they become common parlance, so much so that, Lauren, we don't think about it when we're saying it. That is how they continue to marginalize and other these groups, because we all adopt it without really thinking about the implications. But we live in a world and a society where we have a lot of places where people can share their voices. I follow a crap ton of Native folks on Twitter, and I learn from them every day, and I adjust my perceptions, and I get ideas about, them as individuals and members of groups that I didn't always have. So Clayton asked a question, what things can be said besides spirit animal? Dr. Kristen gave her list of, inspiration. The one we love because we're Harry Potter fans is Patronus.
Because it serves the same kind of entity, which what you're trying to say is this thing is very important to me and is like part of who I am. So like I have a friend who even says, like, I identify with Starbucks chai lattes. Like, you can get really creative here. I identify with, they are my Patronus. They are my spiritual soulmate. Lots of creativity. And the thing that is hard, Clayton, is that we don't have an exact parlance, which is why we've been using this thing. Mm-hmm. So we all get to figure it out together. And the beautiful thing about language too, and I know our editor, Eleanor, is a linguist, and she talks a lot about the elasticity of language. Yeah. So if you use a word that doesn't make sense to another person, they can say, what do you mean by that? And you're like, oh, it's just really important to me. And we can start normalizing other language. So that's a big one. And some other things along those lines are sitting Indian style. We tell children instead, just say, we use sitting cross-legged, because that perpetuates the stereotype of sitting around the wigwam and sitting around the teepee and all those kind of other things. So we don't need to say that anymore. We don't need to say Indian giving, which is incredibly racist, and no one uses it that way. But the historical implication of Indian giving is somebody who's going to steal something back, and paints Natives folks as as manipulative and liars with the settlers. What other? My Canadian and Indigenous friends will say all the time that, like, one of their least favorite things is sell ice to an Eskimo. Eskimo's the white name that was given to them. Inuit is their tribal name. So if you want to make the joke, I could sell ice to an Inuit. I have not heard that they're upset by the joke. I have heard they're upset by the use of the word Eskimo. So that's the same thing with Eskimo kisses. Just say butterfly kisses or penguin kisses or something else. Some stuff like that. Taylor says that the Indian style used to be called crisscross applesauce. That's what it was called for it when I was in Texas. But up here, I was definitely taught sit Indian style.
I'm from Colorado. It was 100% Indian style in Colorado.
No, I think they're doing crisscross applesauce a whole lot more. I know they are in Northern Ireland. I know they are doing it a lot more, but this is just a small one. Like, I know as our generation has kids, I can see more of us forgetting like to say crisscross. And so let's do this.
Yeah.
So those are some other ones. I'm trying to think. Wait a minute. Hold on. Let me consult our list.
That's all right.
Oh, smoke signals.
Yeah.
We are guilty of that. If you listen to some of our old content, we used to make that joke all the time.
It was literally just on our website, on our contact us page, and I changed it the other day to like carrier pigeon or something. Yeah. Again,
because smoke signals are used to communicate across tribes. They're not something that white folks get to use.
Yeah. We've got Clayton chiming in from Texas here. We definitely say crisscross here in Texas. Love it. Yeah, so it's a difficult thing, especially in American culture and North American culture. We have a hard time having hard conversations because when we talked about this in our first GDD Live ever, when we talked about how everyone's a little bit racist and we have to be more comfortable examining our racism, we have to be more comfortable examining these words and listening to folks about it and their perspectives as the marginalized group that is referenced. And I think one of the other, the ones that we came up with, marginalized groups or intersections that we came up with a lot of things we don't say anymore, is a lot to do with gender and sexuality, which is, about bodies and spaces and consent. So a couple of questions that are inappropriate and gender related. Can I touch your baby bump?
This goes to race related, which is no, you cannot touch anyone's hair.
Yeah. Also, you cannot touch it. Can I touch your hair?
No, you cannot. You don't need to. No.
Yeah.
You also don't need to ask if it's a weave, by the way. So.
No, you don't. No, it's none of your business. Is it your time of the month? We make jokes about women's menstruation all the time. And especially as a way when women are being emotional. The patriarchy doesn't really know how to deal with emotions, neither does shallow masculinity. So those are not acceptable things to say. Calling a woman hysterical is not okay because we literally used to incarcerate women for hysteria and experiment on them as a way to maintain control within their family unit. So the history of that, not something we need to keep perpetuating in our language.
The phrase "that's so gay" is the word "gay" has a lot of meanings, but when you say "that's so gay," you're not saying something is light and airy and fun. You are saying that is negative. It is ugly. It is bad. It is creepy. It is weird. That was the number one derogatory thing used when I was growing up, even by my queer friends.
It was that and retarded.
Oh yeah, we don't say that one anymore. I don't know if that's on our list, but you definitely don't say that anymore.
I did. I made a category of ability.
Yeah. It's one of those things, like I still use the word retard because it is a great way to the whole thing is that it is slowed down.
It is slowed down. Yeah. Like you can retard a process.
Yeah. You can retard in music, which is how I use the word, but there's some with that, but back to the gender and sexuality. The other thing we want to say is the idea of the word lifestyle. Now, lifestyle is a very triggering word for many of our queer friends. And many other queer voices we listen to say that lifestyle is a triggering one. So this is one of those words that, like, I don't know a word for the non-racial versions of dog whistling. We need to come up with one.
We do. Speaking of language.
But like, lifestyle is a queer dog whistle, if you guys will grant me that, just in this conversation.
Yeah.
Where like you are telling a lot of people what you think about people when you use that word. So that's a really big one. We also want to say, we're saying this because you guys might not say this, but people you love might say it. And these are really small and great ways to be advocates for equity, is to call out language use. So
yeah, and we've got a couple comments along those lines that I want to address. So Lauren talks about, being challenging. It's challenging to think of yourself as an activist. Lauren, we're the same. Like, a lot of the issues around cultural appropriation are fluid and changing. And, one of the bags that I bought 5 years ago, I was looking at the other day, I was like, oh, that's an appropriative, like, native style that I got from Target. So it's hard to know where we fall in those, but sometimes it's as simple as just, having a little bit of knowledge about one of these things and saying with kindness and grace to people that are using those terms. We've got Taylor coming in saying that, no, you don't need to ask if my boyfriend is my brother. You don't need to ask about other people's relationship statuses, full stop, if you don't know them as strangers. But that's another good one.
And Taylor also said in that comment, like, we look nothing alike and we're holding hands. Like, I love my brother. We look a lot alike. We very rarely hold hands. So that's one of those things where that's being really inappropriate. I think Clayton's bringing up some examples of internalized derogatory language, which is something we really use. So as somebody who is bi, I've seen people throw around "that's so gay" from all sides of the spectrum, even from my LGBT friends and allies. I think especially for millennials, this was so ubiquitous in the 90s that we often don't even know we're using it. It's become like just a thing we say so much. Often surprised Clayton says, I often find myself surprised by how derogatory some of my LGBT friends can throw terms around like they think it's okay for them to say. It's a lot of internalized stuff. I make sexist jokes about myself sometimes because I've got internalized misogyny. And there's a lot to unpack here, and we'll do the internalized stuff on another Good Doctors Diagnose, because that's
yeah. And I think too, there's also a level that of reclamation that is happening with language sometimes. And we've seen this discourse a lot around the N-word and its use in a lot of hip hop and rap lyrics and songs and culture. So I think there's an element to some of that for some people where it's like, I'm going to use this so I can change the meaning of it and reclaim it back for.
We've seen that with queer, just even that word.
Yeah, we've seen that with queer very recently. In the last 20 years or so. So, there's that element happening too, that can happen both on an individual level as a person and as a kind of a collective or a group level. Yeah.
So to kind of wrap out some of the idea, also, transgender folks are not trannies. We don't talk about transvestites really anymore, unless you're singing Rocky Horror Picture Show. And they're the kind of unpacking of even I'm stumbling over my words here, but so I have a lot of trans friends who would tell me that they get really, really angry when somebody says that they identify as a woman, they are a woman. However, there's a lot of us who are cisgendered who are like, well, I identify as a woman. So that word is still fraught. And I think we still haven't quite figured out what that means. Sexual preference, though, in terms of orientation, is not a word, is not something we say anymore. It's not necessarily a preference unless we're talking about maybe the wide spectrum of some kink choices or things as such. But we need to remember that sexuality is a spectrum, kind of what goes with that. Words have elasticity. I want to say that again. And so we are all learning as we go.
Yeah, and Taylor commenting that they were about to bring up queer, and while they're comfortable identifying as gay, a lot of their LGBT friends feel much more comfortable identifying as queer. We see that a lot. I think a lot of people that Dr. Kristen and I both know feel that that's like more encompassing.
Yeah.
Um,
Like rejects a binary, one of my friends always says, and that's important to them.
and
So
as we keep adding letters to what was just G and then LG and then LGBT and then now LGBTQIA plus, we've got a whole lot of letters and ways for people to verbalize who they are, and choose the word that suits them. So I think for me, and I know you and I both use queer as shorthand a lot rather than saying all of those things: demisexual, asexual, pansexual, gender non-binary, gender non-conforming. It's a fast learning curve for a lot of us. I was just raised in a very liberal but hetero performing cisgendered binary life. And so, even as a person who loves to study and learn and listen to other folks and work on understanding how everybody sees themselves, I struggle with these words. And Dr. Kristen will be like, I learned a new one. And I'll be like, what does it mean? Who are these people and where did it come from? And why are we using this term now? So it can be a lot. And so I think both of us I know will just say queer, even just to each other.
Yeah. And Clayton's asking if queer is an umbrella term. That is, I mean, even when it was used derogatorily, that's what it was used for.
Yeah.
And now, as it is becoming redeemed by many in various facets of a community, yes, it's an umbrella term. And this is especially true. The reason I will tell you that my friends that I've talked to say they really resonate with it is that because it acknowledges that there are both gender and sexuality spectrums, and that there's not a word. I have a friend, for instance, who has identified increasingly that what they are is asexual, and they used a lot of words along the way to kind of get there. And so queer becomes just the thing that makes sense as an overarching term. It also is generally just used as shorthand for not heterosexual. But even as social scientist moment, as we all begin to understand that everyone is on a sexuality spectrum, and that the number of people who currently say that they are heterosexual who probably aren't and are somewhere along that spectrum, I think we will continue to see the complete opening of queer as that complete umbrella. There's a book recommended. There's a graphic history of queer theory that I reviewed here on the channel that talked about the use of queer academically as the umbrella term to allow for people to move around in identities within their own lives, with a freedom that breaking down the letters does not give. That was how they phrased it.
Yeah. And I think too, we talk a lot about language and terms as categorizing people. And so, there's a lot of pushback against labels in a lot of discussions around gender and sexuality and ethnicity and race, because some people feel that it is restrictive, or that then there are all these perceptions that come with using that language or identifying with it. So even as you said, the phrase identify as is a way of categorizing or othering folks. It can get really, really complicated. We're not sociolinguistic scholars, though we're doing our yeoman's job today. But I think the only two categories that we want to make sure and shout out and mention are ones around religion and ability. Really, we have language at every intersection that is used to other and marginalize and oppress and suppress people. But those were the two ones that when we were just off the top of our head coming up with things. So we already talked about retarded, idiot, any other ableist language. One of Dr. Kristen's ones that I put under the ableist category is we all have the same 24 hours in a day.
Oh, if you would like to set me off on a rant, tell me that you have the same amount of time in the day as Beyonce. I will verbally eat your face. It makes me so hostile. It is not true. It is not true.
Maybe that should be your next TED application.
Maybe. Do not tell me I am Beyonce. I do not have an army of people, nor am I Beyonce. Like crying out loud.
We also had a couple religious ones. Obviously, there's a lot of negative and derogatory connotations for varying religions. Certainly in the United States, a long history of associating the Jewish religion and Judaism with money and, choices around
being tight-fisted, being
all of those
cheap.
One of the ones we wrote down was "Don't be a Jew about it," which is pretty blatant. But even a lot of the ones relating to, frugality or money saving have a lot of derogatory religious connotations. And for me, as a yoga practitioner, I'm real over all the namaste jokes, which I used to make them all the time. This is another one of those growth arcs for us. It is a word in Sanskrit. It has very holy meaning within the 8 branches of yoga, which is not just the poses that you do in lycra pants. Yoga is a very big tent, and namaste is a very significant word, much like spirit animal, much like dream catcher, which is also on that list of things we don't appropriate anymore. And anytime you demean or diminish that or use it to talk about drinking rosé, you're minimizing a language and a faith system and a practice and a lot of people that believe in that word. So I think that's what we've got. Namaste in bed. Jay said namaste in bed is one of my pajamas. I feel horrible for it now. This is a non-judgmental. Don't feel horrible for it, Jay. We learn by doing. That is one of our mottos. I
definitely bought Dr. Aaron a tote bag that said like namaste all day at some point. So yeah. I mean,
I had until I started practicing this particular branch of yoga where I learn a lot of the poses in Sanskrit. I had no concept of the significance of that word. So
yeah, I spent like a month in India and definitely didn't absorb the significance of that word to the level that I shouldn't. Really quick, we got a question from Lauren. Weren't European Jews regulated to financial work by the dominant Christian society because finance was seen as dirty? Yes, that is exactly why that joke is bad. We have a whole thing in the book of Matthew about being money lenders. And that Zacchaeus was a moneylender and he was Jewish, and there's a whole theological biblical history here. But yes, that was often the job that was allotted. And it's actually, there's a lot of stories around, like, as Hitler was purging Jewish communities, one of the ways that some Christian allies were trying to fight back against that was even using this as a bit of power. Like, well, they're really good with money. We don't want to get rid of them, and trying that angle, which didn't work because Hitler was still Hitler. But that joke comes from a place of marginalization. And it's important to remember, we say this every time we talk about anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is the number 2 reason in the United States for hate crimes. This is not behind race, by the way, because we don't classify gender as a hate crime. So it would be number 3 because gender would be the top one.
Gender would be the top one for sure. Yeah.
Looking at domestic violence statistics. But number 2, and there's a lot of us that know and love people of either non-practicing hereditary Jewish heritage and faith or practicing Jewish faith and they deal with microaggressions and anti-Semitism on a regular basis that would make a lot of our heads spin. And if you want to know more about that, you can check our video, my Welcome to My World conversation with Sophie Herscher, who is a as she would say, public token Jew to all of her Christian friends. And she's also one of my favorite humans on the planet. And she breaks down a lot more of exactly what anti-Semitism looks like in the United States these days. She experienced her first anti-Semitic attack on her synagogue when she was 9. And so it has very much shaped her life. So if you would like to know more about that particular community and intersection, we've got it here on the channel for you.
We do. All right.
I think this is officially our longest Good Doctors Diagnose.
I know, but we've got so much wonderful engagement from folks joining us live that it's fueled. It fueled the discussion. We love to have it. We love to see it. We talk to each other all the time. We're happy when other humans join us and share their thoughts and experiences with us. So
obviously, if you're here, we notice everyone who has commented, we know you well and are friends with you. So we know you have liked and subscribed. But as you are potentially sharing this with friends and family, if you like what we said, please like and subscribe to our content. It is, we give it as a gift. Honestly, we exist to serve. And that's what we see our YouTube channel as. And this is a big part of that empathy educator piece that we talk about a lot. And we'd like to do that. If you are part of the replay crew, please give your questions, give your comments. We want to continue to engage with it. And like we said to all of you guys who are joining us right now and everybody joining us later, this will be formalized. We'll give you even more kind of examples and different words to use. So be watching for that later on in the year. It will helpfully still be called things we don't say anymore. So we're not going to pull a fast one on you, but there will be a mini course that will be easy to share around. Lauren and Jay and Roxanne are saying thank you to us, and to you, we say thank you as well. Clayton, we are so glad you were able to jump in. We hope we get to 1,000 subs as well soon, because once we do, we will do the talk on the women of Game of Thrones.
Women of Game of Thrones, y'all.
That is our promise. And we may even do it in some sort of, I will construct some sort of costume of some fashion. But yeah, 1,000 subscribers, and we'll talk about Game of Thrones.
We should do like special Game of Thrones Zoom backgrounds or something.
Oh, we totally could do that. I would break
backgrounds.
my hatred of the green screen, I think, for our subscribers.
I don't like Zoom backgrounds because then parts of you disappear. But maybe for like the start of the video, we could have like Game of Thrones-y stuff with us. We could probably talk about it for several hours. If you guys saw on social media recently, we did some filming for The Falcon and the Winter Soldier and talked way more about that than we thought we were going.
We're not. The classic example is episode 3, which doesn't include a lot of like social commentary necessary. We're like, we only have a couple minutes. It was what, like 45 minutes? Guys.
Yeah. If you guys think we have a lot to say about The Handmaid's Tale,
wait until we get to Falcon and Winter Soldier, because we actually like that show.
Wow. Yeah. So Lauren, please, thank you. Get your social worker friends to subscribe.
We obviously love social workers here. Social workers and librarians. Roxanne, we are not going to do WandaVision or Loki for a couple reasons. However, this is a great time for the announcement. Roxanne, you were reading my mind. Next week on this very channel at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are going to be joined by honorary good doctor Nadine Thornhill.
Whoop, whoop.
Who is going to talk to us, because she has seen WandaVision. She is going to talk to us about grief and trauma in WandaVision. And we're going to have a conversation around that. Neither one of us has seen Loki, and I'm looking at our schedules. We have no idea when we're going to be able to watch Loki. But if we do and end up finding good stuff in it to chat about, for example, we both loved The Mandalorian. We're not going to be talking about The Mandalorian. It's not quite within what we like to chat about. But if we find stuff that we think is good in Loki, we will for sure. But as of this moment, the only WandaVision and Loki coverage will be with Dr. Nadine next week.
Yeah, I haven't had any time to pay attention to what's happening with Loki, although my brother is watching it and did say he thought I would find it interesting, but I think he meant me personally, not necessarily the good doctors. So
yeah, it's fallen off our radar. Oh, Lauren is excited for the WandaVision discussion. Please, Lauren, come. Very famously, we have not seen WandaVision. So we would love all of you guys to come and talk with Dr. Nadine, with us, as we unpack, and we'll be honest next week about why we didn't watch it. And Nadine is aware why we didn't watch it. And she's going to be addressing addressing that with us. And so we will be unpacking all of that, but definitely come. If you love WandaVision, come and support Dr. Nadine next week as she educates us on everything. Siobhan, please finish Winter Soldier. It is a lot. And our coverage is as well, but we had a lot of fun. So,
we had a lot of fun. Dr. Kristen got to sit in Fandom Corner, which hopefully our lovely video editor Eleanor can get like a snazzy banner for Fandom Corner. We don't know.
She's magic. So we just like, we love her. So
Siobhan asked, very important question. When is Winter Soldier? I got upset and stopped watching. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier aired in
May. We are going to start covering it in 2 weeks on the channel.
2 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah. Next week?
It's the end of July. I believe July 29th. I think I actually looked this up. July the 29th will be the first episode. I'm scrolling right now just for you, Siobhan. Give me 2 minutes to scroll through our content calendar.
We just released our Handmaid's Tale season 4 recap today. So, next week is WandaVision.
Yes. So July the 29th, it will be on the thing and continue for all 6 episodes plus a season 1 recap. So there'll be 7 episodes. Siobhan, you are not my only friend that stopped watching because they got upset for various reasons. We completely validate that. Also, we like to think that you can enjoy our coverage about things without seeing the actual content. Jay can attest to this. She watches our Handmaid's Tale stuff and has never seen the show. God love her. So hopefully you can enjoy our coverage regardless of what it was, of your interaction with the original source material, which is also good news for us because we cover a lot of stuff that is more difficult to get a hold of, especially in our Colonizers World Tour. A little bit more saying that we just watched a movie. We'll cover it in a couple weeks on the channel. The very first movie from Mozambique to ever be on Netflix. It's called Redemption, and we'll be covering it on the channel as well and talking about the art of Mozambique, which is rich and we had no idea. So we love learning around here.
Yeah. Before we let you guys go, another reminder, the Culture Cast exists, the Good Doctors podcast. You can find it everywhere currently except Apple Podcasts because they're being snarky. But if you listen to podcasts and you like us,
we're definitely on Spotify. I've seen us on
Spotify. We're on Libsyn. We're on our blog. You can get the links there. But please like and subscribe and review when you can. We're starting with our Bridgerton coverage and then jumping into some Oscar coverage we did earlier this year and then the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So if you want to listen to us in your car or on your walk or away from the YouTubes.
And the Good Doctor's Diagnosis will be up every Wednesday. So you'll still have, if you've missed some of our lives or you've missed some of these, they will be in the podcast feed 2 Wednesdays after they appear on the YouTubes.
All right. Fantastic conversation, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope wherever you are in the world, you are as healthy and as safe and as well as possible and not, in trouble from climate change, although we are all a little bit here. But
we also hope you're a little bit less sunburned than I am. And I tried a new sunscreen. I'm not irresponsible with my skincare. I promise. I tried a new sunscreen and it didn't work. It didn't work. And I was on a boat in the middle of the ocean. It was not a good look for me. But anyway, we hope you are doing well, that you are hydrated and hopeful and well loved. And we love you all for sure. We hold you dear in our hearts, everyone who comments and who joins us. So we will see you next time, wherever we see you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.